So our agenda tonight, we're going to kick it off with our oral communications, but I don't see any attendees here, which would be members of the public. So again, I know many of you may have used Zoom, but I'll just do a quick orientation in case you haven't. At the lower taskbar, you have your mute button on the left, which I invite you to use if you are not speaking or if you need to have some background noise. You've got your stop video button if you need that. Participants, you click that and you can see all the folks who are here in this meeting. Just, excuse me, a list of their names, and it looks like most of us are on video. There's a chat. I ask if you, even though we have the chat, if you can refrain from using it, just because we want to make sure all this meeting's being recorded so that everything that happens is documented. If you do use the chat, it's fine. At the end of the meeting, I'll just show what happened in the chat, but we try not to use that. Hi, Yanin, she's here.
Yes.
During our public meetings. And then, of course, if you don't know, at the very top of your window, you have speaker view. If you click that, you can have a view where you see the speaker. And so anytime someone's talking, it will go to that person. And you can click gallery view, which lets you see everybody who is in the Zoom. So that's kind of a nice way to be able to see folks' faces and kind of get some of those nonverbal cues that we usually have if we're in person. So what we're going to do tonight is talk about, really try to look at topic by topic and talk about areas where as a group, we may have areas where we agree, where we disagree, and really try to come to some agreements if we can on topics. And then those agreements, such as, perhaps we might identify areas where we think taller buildings should go within the NB cap. Those areas would influence development of an alternative that would be created by this group and also the other subcommittee. So if you recall, last month, we had a meeting where we had several proposals from members of the working group. Thank you all for taking your time to make those great proposals. And so we kind of got to see where everyone is, what their kind of thoughts are, and some really cool ideas. And so now we're kind of talking through some of those bit by bit, hopefully to come to some plan or plans that we think are the best that we want to put forward to the city council, first to planning commission and then to city council. So that's our goal. We're going to do an example of the process in just a minute. After I do that example, I'm going to ask Angela if she'll share a little bit about how she worked to create the handbook that we'll be using tonight. And I'll be using a Google Doc version of it so that I can type your comments and take some notes that we can all see, but it's the same as the packet that you had. It's not any different than your packet. So I'm going to share my screen. And which I think, can you all see it's at the NVCAP webpage?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna navigate here. Looks like my computer's gets to be slow today too. All right, does that okay viewers, do I need to zoom in more?
This is better. Yeah, it's
better. Okay.
Yeah.
If anybody can't see it, I can zoom in for you. Oh, wow. My computer's going to be very slow today, apparently. That will be fun. All right. So we're going to do example. Oh, gosh. First, it won't scroll down, then it scrolls down too much. Okay. So the format we're going to use today is going to be discussing the questions one at a time. And sometimes if we can't make progress on a question, we might defer it until a later discussion. And so we'll try to spend 10 to 15 minutes on each question, see if we can get to something where we might have some agreement. Maybe it's not 100% agreement, but then we might move on. So what will happen is each working group member will have 1 minute to state their opinion. And at the 1 minute mark, Nikki is going to come on screen. She's going to say time. So when you see Nicole's face go from the city of Palo Alto, little logo she has, to her face, that's going to be your cue. And also her saying 1 minute. That's your cue that you've passed 1 minute. So we ask you to try to wrap up or conclude at that time. And then there'll be discussion after everybody kind of goes around to say what their thoughts are. This might be time to ask each other questions, to propose more, or to have a new solution like, oh, I agree with this person. What if we combine these options into one? And then lastly, if we need to, we might do a vote. to say like, okay, well, who agrees with this one and who agrees with that one? And we might at least see where we are. It might not be that we have total agreement, but we might at least see where the lay of the land is. I think it would be great if it'll be awesome when we have, you know, unanimity, when everyone's like, yeah, this is the consensus we built, this would be acceptable to all of us. But it also might be the case that we have two options that people really like and don't agree on, and that's okay. But we've narrowed it down from, let's say, 5 or 10 or you know, even more options to a few that we're kind of centering around, which will help us as we begin to try to move towards developing these alternatives. So we're going to do a practice really quick. And then after the practice, if you have questions, you know, feel free to ask questions. So what we'll do, let me just adjust my own view here. Great. So, and also when you're in this view of the full screen, if you go over to where the people are, our participants, there's a little boxes at the top that are gray that have like a 1, like a bigger box, a 2, and then a little grid. That lets you see more of the people even while I'm sharing the screen. So if you want to see people's faces, you can do that. And then you can adjust the size of that box too. You can drag it so you can see hopefully everybody. Some of that depends on the size of your monitor, so it may not work in all cases. So this is a practice. The question here is, you know, everyone's favorite, which is which flavor of ice cream should we have at the next meeting? So the answers are A, vanilla, because everyone was okay with vanilla. So that's, you know, the persuasive argument someone has made for vanilla. B, chocolate. The caffeine will help us to stay alert. And C, strawberry, because it's the best. So we would go around, each person would say what their favorite is or what their answer to this question is going to be. So I will we'll do that right now. So I'm going to start with Alex, then I'll go to Lakiba, Kirsten, Keith, Terry, and Yunan. So if you want to say your favorite ice cream, or at least what one you think we should have in the next meeting, which is actually the question, we'll take that now. So go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, chocolate.
Chocolate, okay. Lakiba, what flavor of ice cream should we have at the next meeting?
Vanilla.
Vanilla, okay. Kirsten?
Vanilla, please.
All right. Keith?
Chocolate.
Okay. I guess I have to do some abbreviations. Terry?
Chocolate, because I love it.
There we go. All right. And then Yunan, what flavor of ice cream should we have?
Strawberry.
Strawberry. Okay. So we had everybody said we get to see where everybody is. Angela and Gail, I'm not calling on you because you were at the last meeting. So that's why. So then I would say, okay, we saw where everybody is. Does anybody have a proposal of how we could either compromise they want to move their position, they want to ask a question? So any questions or ideas about which flavor ice cream we should have at the next meeting? Looks like we're at an impasse. We don't get to have any ice cream.
Maybe we could get a chocolate swirl, so it's vanilla and chocolate.
There we go. So that's one. So then I would write that. I would say, okay, chocolate.
Another option. I think that vanilla, one can add chocolate and thus add caffeine, but you cannot take the caffeine out of the chocolate. Therefore, for people who are sensitive, it would not be a good choice.
Ooh, good point. Good point. So then we might say, I mean, I don't want to rush us, but, and my computer's going haywire right now, but we could say, okay, we could have Neapolitan and we can have all flavors separated so people can choose, you know, whichever one they want from the side of the bucket that appeals to them. And then we might say, does everyone agree with that? And we can raise our hands and use a verbal, say, yes, I do agree with that. Or like, no, I don't like Neapolitan because, you know, I just am morally opposed to chocolate. I don't want to have it in my presence. And so we would have that discussion. So if we got to some agreement, we would move on to the next question. And if we couldn't, we would say, okay, let's document where we are right now and then move on to the next one. Does that kind of make sense to folks? Is that more or less kind of clear? All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Angela. I'm going to stop sharing really quick so I can try to hopefully fix why my computer is being maybe a little slow. And Angela, do you want to say a little bit about how you worked to put together this handbook, which if you don't know, Angela did like heavy lifting to actually read through everyone's responses, put it into a document, try to really help us. So thank you, Angela, for that work. And maybe you can say a little bit about how you did it. And I don't know, Kirsten, is your question, do you want to ask it now or?
It's basically, do you think this process will lead to zonability?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, am I up? Okay, so yes, I did my very best. I just want to tell you that anybody who contributed something as some reasons for their feelings about these really difficult issues that I know we have some disagreement about, I did my very best to include the high points of your arguments. And I really apologize if I didn't manage to do it for you. And that's why we're having, well, that's one reason why we're having this meeting, because it will allow you to speak up and say what you think, even if I didn't manage to do what I wanted to do, which is make everybody's opinions and reasons for their opinions as clear as possible. I do want to encourage you, if there are more issues that you think are issues that we disagree about and we need to discuss more thoroughly, you know, please let, I guess, Rachel and Chitra and Nicole know so that we can work with those at another meeting. Because I know there are probably more issues. I just picked up the issues that I heard us disagreeing about in past meetings. I do want to emphasize that zoning is our tool. That's how we can actually make changes. That's my understanding right now. And please correct me if that's not right, Rachel or anybody. I also want to say that in the last meeting that I actually did participate in, I won't be participating in this one. Gail and I were both part of the first meeting on the 25th. That it really matters to listen, and it really, really matters that we don't take more than our 1 minute per argument, because people were just, you know, overwhelmed with the information and stuff. So as clear and simple and succinct as you can be about your reasons for wanting one choice would be great. That will just help us get through a lot more. Of course, there are some situations I realize that you cannot say your reasons in under a minute. So I do understand that, but I just want to encourage people to be as clear and simple as possible. And I also want to say that when I was compiling everything, it wasn't about voting or anything like that. And in a way, even the votes that we take today, they're not a final decision. It's not something that this is it. No, we can't change our minds. We can change our minds in the future. Yes, so that's it. I'm really interested to hear what people have to say today. I don't expect us to get through all of these questions. There's just so many questions, but hopefully we'll get through quite a few of them, and we'll get a sense at least where people stand. And maybe if people are able to really hear others, we can come up with some new solutions, or we can understand why other people have their opinions, and we can be persuaded, because that's the idea, is that we could be persuaded. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for participating.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela. And then Gail, did you want to say anything? You were also at the last meeting. She's here again to observe and make sure we have some continuity between the two groups. If you have anything you'd like to add, welcome that now.
No, thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing people's comments.
Great. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to question 1. So if you do want to follow along in your own notes, or you have the packet in front of you, it's question 1. And I know sometimes with the screen sharing, depending on the person who's looking at it, it can be hard to see. It can just be really tiny sometimes. So, all right, so question 1, sorry, it's the first question, but it's actually question 2, because question 1 was, what was your name in the online survey? So question 2, which office space policy option do you support? Retaining the same amount of office space that currently exists in the MBCAP area, with about 578,000 square feet. Only allow new offices that are each smaller than 10,000 square feet, such as professional service offices like doctor, lawyer, architect, etc. Enough office space to subsidize 20% on-site affordable housing units. Projects proposing additional office square footage must create the number of housing units to support the number of jobs created. E, include 100,000 to 130,000 square feet of new office. No new offices, letter F. And G, current office space should be converted to housing. Then H would be a new solution. So I know it's a little hard to see all of the options on one page. Let's see if I can get that. But does anybody feel moved to start with their 1 minute? If not, I will call on you. Lakiba, did you come off mute to start?
Yes.
Great.
So I chose A or B. Just my feeling that the area shouldn't be overtaken by office space. And so first I liked A, but then I thought, am I okay with a little bit of office space? Yes. So I included B, and I'm not hard fast on it. So if someone convinces me otherwise, I could be motivated to try chocolate or strawberry.
Okay, great, thank you. Next. And you can just go ahead and go, because it's hard for me sometimes to see folks. All right, Kirsten, I see you're off mute, so if you want to go, or.
That's a mistake there. I'll make sure I put my mute on next time. I would say B and D as a combination, in that I believe that we are adjacent to an area that has a great deal of enterprise scale office buildings, the Stanford Research Park. And we already have built some enterprise scale office buildings in Ventura in recent projects. So we don't need to build more enterprise scale, you mean company headquarters scale office buildings, but we do perhaps need the small, more entrepreneurial small businesses, like I am a small business. I'd love to rent office space, but can't afford it. And I believe that the office space should provide or contribute to housing units. So combined projects would be welcomed with office in the ground floor, or retail ground floor, office second floor, housing above.
Great. So you said B and D, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, great. Keith, were you gonna go?
Yes, I can go.
Yes.
So mine would be primarily, G, current office space should be converted to housing. I think this is, well, let's go with that first, and then I'll give you my caveat. The council's highest priority this year is housing. This is zoned for housing. This is ARM 30 land, most of it. And we should honor that and build housing where it's zoned to be housing. It's just, if we put offices on it, we're in such a jobs housing imbalance that's just going to make matters worse, or we're going to be a lost opportunity. Now, the caveat is that I would not mind having some community serving retail or community serving offices like dentists in there. I don't have a problem with that, as long as it's a small fraction and fits with the neighborhood.
Got it. Thank you. Alex, do you mind going?
Sure. So I think I'm leaning towards, I think it's B, or yeah, I think it's B. I was also considering C for a while, because I've seen some new projects in Palo Alto that are using the office to subsidize residential. So I am intrigued about that. But I'm a little cautious about it because I've seen also like some projects where we've used office space to subsidize grocery stores, and they've had issues with those projects. So I'm a little bit worried about using office to subsidize the residential. I did review like the SOFA plan, and I did look at the limits that they put on in the SOFA area. And I think they were trying to cap like the new amount of office space per parcel at like 5,000 square feet. And I think that that's been working okay. And I think they did grandfather in a lot of the existing office space. And to me, the SOFA plan seems to be working really well. That's it.
Can I ask just a question? When you say the grandfathering, do you think then that are you saying you would support that, or just offering that as insight?
Well, I thought about say like the Cloudera site, it's been Hewlett Packard offices since, I think it's like 1940. I may not have the date exact, but they've been, Hewlett Packard was there on Page Mill Road for a very, very long time. It seems to be, it's a historic use. It seems to be working well. Regarding the Fry site, though, I think the council has made it clear in the past that they wanted housing and they wanted to grandfather out the commercial. So I'm fine with standing by that previous decision.
So maybe it kind of depends a little bit, is kind of what I hear you saying, just in terms of the grandfathering, and we can come back to that.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't really quite understand how much this, historic precedence takes with regard to zoning.
I just wouldn't want to write down your answer.
Yeah.
Like, for example, under something like A, which is like the same amount or something like that, if that's not.
Okay, I guess I'm in A. Yeah, you put me like between A and B.
Okay, I'm just going to put a little letter here just so I can remember. Okay, Terry, would you mind going?
Sure. I hope you can see and hear me at the same time. Like I said, my bandwidth might be a problem, but if it is, let me know.
Okay, we'll do that.
I wrote down some notes. So I believe in a combination of F and G. And G, I think, was one of the options in the report. I don't know if it was on your list, but I wrote down these notes. I said, we already have a glut of office space in Palo Alto. Right next door to me is a 3-story office building at 2555 Park, which has now stood empty for more than 2 years. This could have been a housing site. In Silicon Valley already, we have the worst, in Palo Alto, we have the worst jobs housing imbalance. We have a nearly 6-to-1 ratio. We need to focus on housing which is most needed in the city, which is BMR housing. Palo Alto already meets or nearly meets some of its arena numbers for market rate housing. And I finally concluded by saying there's an old saying which everybody knows: when you find yourself in a hole, digging.
Yeah, thank you. And Terry, I think you did kind of break up towards the end. I could mostly hear you, but I don't know how other folks heard. Was it okay?
No, Terry broke up for me too.
Okay, so maybe try the not video. I don't want to have to invisibility again.
I'll turn my video on.
Okay, sorry about that, but I did catch all of that. So, all right, and then Yunan, would you like to share?
From my side, I would vote A or B. I feel just for this North Ventura, this area, I don't want more office building, but for the existing one, I feel it's okay. And also my question, actually, I assume the office also includes all the retail, small business, right? It's everything except residents.
That's a great question. It does not. So this is specifically office uses, which would include research and development offices like Playground Global. It would not include retail. I'm trying to think of what retail is over there, but it wouldn't include, banks or anything or shops. So that would be an additional.
Okay, so it's just these offices.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I feel there should be no more offices. So yeah, I would stick with this A option. Yeah.
Great. So then, so now we'll just kind of summarize what we see here. It looks like under A, we've got about 3 people who are open to A, kind of retaining what's there. Mostly I heard kind of maybe either grandfathering or allowing what exists to exist, or maybe the same amount that exists might be a better way to phrase it, which is what the question says. We got a lot of support for B. Got 4 people under B, which I think a lot of folks are supporting certain types of office uses in a small scale. And we got Alex maybe saying C, but some skepticism I heard. Kirsten, we've got under D, which is balancing. You build housing. If you build office, you have to balance that with housing that you've built. And then Terry has F and G, and Keith, sorry, Terry and Keith under G, which is convert the current office space to housing. And I will say these aren't mutually exclusive. You know, a number of these strategies could be employed at any time. So it's not like we have to decide on just one of them as like the way to go. They could be layered together. So maybe I'll ask if anybody has any either questions for each other, comments. You know, we could also just go point by point too and say like, you know, do people object to B? If everyone's okay with B, for example, we could say yes to that. But I'll leave the floor open for folks who may have questions or just comments for each other. And feel free to just, you don't have to raise your hand. You can just kind of small enough.
Comment?
Mm-hmm.
One thing, I'm sorry, I'm not very articulate today.
All right.
The jobs, housing, and balance will be improved if we design an area that has much more housing than jobs. So in some ways, I was sort of pro D, because insisting that we add housing and whenever we can, and that any office added must build, and maybe amend D to say must build greater than the number of housing units. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it says, D currently says additional office square footage must create the number of housing units to support the number of jobs created. Must create in excess of the number of housing units. And anyway, but I definitely see the point of F and G. So
that's great. Thanks. Sorry, my efforts.
I'll slightly rebut what Kristen is saying. Or Kirsten,
yeah.
Sorry. I understand where you're coming from, and that's a common thought process. Like, well, as long as it's balanced. The problem is that this is zoned for residential, and just across the street over in the industrial park, we're going to have a lot of building up there, adding more offices that will not be balanced. And even the one that was being proposed right now is still more jobs than housing. And so this is
very valid point. Yeah,
we have to make the most of this. That's my attitude, is that we have to make the most of this since it is residential.
Great. I do want to throw out, and I think it might be helpful. I don't think every parcel is zoned for residential. I think that, and Teacher, you can correct me because I think you're more familiar with the parcel by parcel. I think some sites are zoned for non-residential uses, and some are for some of that is commercial services, which is retail more. And I know that we're not talking about that, but I just want to clarify, like, for example, Cloudera, I don't know if that's zoned RM30. I don't believe so.
No.
Okay. So I think if
yeah.
there is a distinction between parcels, then I just want to know that so we can note that for the discussion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A little bit of explanation between A and F. One is starting with retain the same amount of office space, and F says no new offices, which seems like it means the same thing. So
great question.
How are they different? I could potentially go to F. What made you select F over A? Those that selected F.
Terry, do you want to speak to that? F is no new offices, and A is only the same amount as currently.
Well, I mean, I agree with what Keith said earlier, and that is we have a huge deficit in housing, especially in below market rate housing and for the very low below market rate housing. And we aren't doing enough to emphasize to the city that that is where the greatest need is. And yes, it costs money to build that. I understand that. And I understand there's subsidies involved and all of that. I understand all of that. However, that is where the greatest need is. And that is where the city needs to concentrate, in my opinion. So that's my view.
I don't see, though, the difference between A and F.
I'll offer what I think the difference is, and then folks, if they have a different perspective on it, I would hope we could hear that too. I think A is saying that right now there's existing office, and I would imagine, for example, if someone, let's say, wants to redevelop their building, their office building, to new office or to new housing and office, that they could keep that same amount that they have.
Okay.
But that they, and then
that would be.
Yeah, F is saying, well, once you lose it, you lose it. You
Okay.
know, if you tear down the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, a great question. So what I'm gonna do now, I guess if there are any more comments or questions or responses to each other's comments. So what I'm gonna do now, maybe we'll kind of go to some areas where it seems like we have some coalescing and see what we think. So it sounds like we have about 4 people who were supportive of option B, which is allowing some smaller offices, could be smaller than 10,000 square feet, or we could do 5,000. We could decide that now or later. And then it'd only be for certain types of uses that typically might be more neighborhood surfing or serving a smaller region, such as a doctor, dentist, I think I heard, et cetera. Are there folks who did not support this when they went around, but who are supportive of this? So who said, yeah, if that was allowed, I'd be okay with it. Or conversely, who you're like, no, I don't want to support those types of uses or smaller offices. Hearing no objection to it, I'm going to assume that people are okay with it. Angela?
I just want to make it clear and to make sure that everybody understands. I'm not going to state my opinion one way or the other. But for B, we're saying additional to what's there already. In addition to what's there already for B. Is that your understanding, Rachel?
Yes. I mean, the caveat would be that it would be additional to what's there already, though. If we chose some of the other options, you know, the existing office would eventually go away. So like if we chose F, over time, the existing office might go away, and the only new ones that would be allowed would be these smaller offices of certain types of uses. That's it.
I have something I'd like to add. Is there, yeah. Can you add in these businesses would be only neighborhood serving?
Retail, though.
Yeah, I think it's that it's an office versus a retailer.
Well, I wouldn't support any additional offices, period.
Well, as a small business owner, I'd like to advocate for how challenging it is to start a business and find small office. It's just not a category and there's a lot of people who might want to have a flower business. I have a friend who's a florist, works out of her garage because she can't find a space. I'm an interior designer. I work out of my garage because I can't find a space that I can afford. There's a lot of small businesses, and these are entrepreneurs too, and they contribute to the local economy too. So I'm not saying you have to do this, but I'm just saying that there is that point of view that There's a lot of small food entrepreneurs that can't find space. And maybe even, so anyway, I just feel like this economy works really well for large entrepreneurs, large offices, and doesn't work well for small entrepreneurs. And so that was the reason I advocated for, or that's why I said B was my choice.
Thanks, Kirsten. Terry, did you have a comment on that, or anybody else response?
I'll respond to explain my thought process. I mean, I totally understand what Kirsten is saying. I sympathize. I'm just worried about chipping away and, you know, finding an exception here and an exception there, and all of a sudden we've lost this opportunity for this big residentially zoned area. My preference would be to try and find those spots elsewhere in the city when we do other redevelopments. Let's say in the research park, which is not zoned residential, say that you have to have 10% of your spots for small businesses or something like that. That might be one way of getting that without affecting North Ventura.
Kirsten?
I just don't think there's much of a place. We're losing Cubberley. So it's, artists are small entrepreneurs too. You know, ceramicists and artists are losing Cubberley. Sculptors are losing Cubberley. It used to be a place that they could locate. I just don't think there's much of a place. And these are often low-income people that are running these small businesses. So they're not going to be paying Stanford Research. They're not going to be equaling what a large corporation could pay per square foot in Stanford Research Park. But I'm okay. I go with the group, and I will certainly go with the group wisdom.
Yeah, well, I think we have 4 supportive and 2 opposed to this. Keith, you did say you wanted to see, like, you were okay with doctor's office or dentist's office. How would you see those coming into being if there was going to be a dentist in the area?
In what sense?
Well, I'm just saying, if we don't allow, new offices of a certain size, how would that dentist be allowed to be in the NBCAP area?
The zoning would allow a small amount of retail-like, I think is the city's category for that zoning. So the zoning would not be entirely residential. And if, for example, along El Camino, it's it's not RM30, it's something else along there.
It's commercial service.
Yes.
Yeah. Where you can have offices, or you also can, you can have retail, or you also can have residential. And they would be located in those areas that are zoned appropriately.
Okay, so I think maybe I would like us to suspend the zoning a little bit and say, for example, if it was a doctor, lawyer, architect, dentist, et cetera, at a small amount of space, would you be supportive of that existing?
I would, yes.
Okay, so I think that, and if it was somebody tore down a building and on the ground floor or a second floor had some office space for that type of use, would that be okay?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay, because I think
the point is, and let me clarify why I look more favorably on that than I do on Kirsten's office, is that this is neighborhood serving. This is the people who would be living there, hopefully would be going to this. Hopefully they'd be walking there and not having traffic. So that makes it appealing to me. I like I said, I sympathize with the small businessman, but we have such a housing debt that I hate making exceptions and starting. So.
Okay. So I'm just going to write that we have 4 folks who are supportive, which is right now a majority, and then we have 2 opposed to this idea, but sounds like you're open to some type of compromise. It can be retail-like, but it can't be something else. I'm not maybe totally capturing it, but. Okay. I think there's maybe a smaller I think part of what we can do, or what can be challenging with zoning sometimes, is we can't always be as specific with what the business is, because it has to be able to succeed and pay the rent. So I can't guarantee that everybody who goes to that dentist office is going to be in that neighborhood and be nearby or walk to it, right? So we got to be understanding that realistically.
Yeah, but statistically, if you have a dentist in a neighborhood, you're at least giving people the option of walking to the dentist if they want.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. So we have some consensus around this one. For letter A, retaining the same amount, we had 3 folks who wanted to retain the same amount that currently is. So either, which could be, either grandfathering the existing space and allowing people, if they did rebuild, to have that office in that new building. I don't know if anybody else has been persuaded towards that end after discussion, or if those 3 folks are staying there. Or anyone vehemently opposed to it. Or just even moderately opposed, I suppose. You don't have to be vehemently opposed. Okay. And then we had Kirsten spoke up about the balancing, and then Terry had proposed no new offices, or wasn't a lot of support for no new office, and 2 for supporting converting the office to housing. I don't know if anybody is seeing some things rising to the top besides letter B, or maybe if this is kind of what we're okay with, is that there's some new office that's neighborhood serving, or that at least is of certain types of uses, retail-like uses, and that there's a smaller group of half of the group that is supportive of retaining what currently exists. Are there any other comments or compromises or combinations of solutions that folks are seeing? Okay, so hearing nothing from folks, I think we'll move on to the next question. Does that sound, Angela, based on our last meeting, does that sound good? Moving on to the next question. Yeah. You're on mute, Angela, but I think you said yes. All right, we're moving on to question number 3. So this is about the location of office space. So if folks obviously supported having no new office space, perhaps other than the neighborhood serving, this may be a question that you feel like, the answer is none of the above, and that's okay. But for those who either thought that we should maybe retain what's there, or allow certain smaller offices to be built, some of the locations suggested were on the Cloudera site, along 340 Portage on that site, along El Camino Real and Page Mill, so kind of on the exterior perimeter of the project area, on Park Boulevard, on Lambert Avenue, and then F would be a new solution. So Alex, why don't you go first, and if you have a preference.
Yeah, I don't have a strong preference on these, but I think I'm leaning towards, if I had to put them in order, it would be C, right? And then I guess it's 1 or A, Cloudera. And then I guess then I would say Park, D. Okay. You can just put 2. If you're limited, we can just put 2.
No, you can choose all that apply, so that's fine. Okay, Lakiba?
Sorry.
There you go.
I picked B, C, and E.
B, C, and E?
Correct.
All right. Do you want to speak to any of your choices?
Well, just in general, I'm personally not wanting to add anything to the Cloudera site. I mean, it's already got a big building on it. So that's not my favorite, although I could be convinced. And also I like walking and biking down Park Boulevard. So didn't want to add any office space there. So I chose the others.
That makes sense. Great process. Keith, do you mind sharing?
Yeah, so if we had some type of retail or retail-like offices, I'd be happiest, I think, along El Camino and Page Mill. The biggest reason for that is that the traffic now would not necessarily be going into the neighborhood. And whereas if you had it, for example, at 340 Portage, then people would be driving in to go to their dentist appointment. So that's why I would prefer El Camino, Page Mill. Cloudera, again, that's pretty similar. That's pretty much along Page Mill, so that wouldn't be terrible either. But I think El Camino and Page Mill is the best answer.
Is that what you said? You said just El Camino and Page Mill, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just hear that you're saying like because it's like on the Page Mill El Camino side, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Cloudera would be a second. I don't find that quite as acceptable, but it'd be reasonable. The others I would not support.
Yeah, and probably not facing Park Boulevard if it was on that site.
Yeah, I'd be worried about this bike parking. A bike travel is dangerous enough along Park. I don't want to add traffic to it.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, Yunan?
I would pick Caldera site because as in the previous question, I vote for retain the existing office building. So I think Caldera place is close to the transition station, and also it's the most cost-saving option. We don't need to change it anymore. So my assumption is we don't we don't change the Caldera office building to another office building. So it's already there. So we can still let it keep there.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Kind of based on what you said before, if it's still staying there, then that's a great site to have it. And then, as you said, close to
I don't want to add more offices.
Right.
So yeah, I would just pick Caldera site. And I do agree for El Camino, we can have more retail services like now these like the Verizon, AT&T services there now. Something similar to that. But I thought that was not office, right? That is retail services.
Yeah, it's right. So I'll just put this area for retail services, not office. But since we're having conversations, so Keith said that, and I think you're trying to say you agree with kind of what he had said about that.
Yes.
So I think that's helpful. Okay, Kirsten?
I think the most logical place is Cloudera because I think transportation in the future might be more transit oriented than it is now, just because transit is a single occupant car travel is getting more and more difficult because of density. Second choice would probably be El Camino and Page Mill. Part of my logic for that is that office buildings will probably be taller buildings, and I'd like to keep to a 1-to-1 ratio from the width of the street to the height of the building next to the street.
Great. And then Terry?
Okay. I'm not for adding new office space, but if it's with the choices are those choices, I would pick C. I think it's as far away from the neighborhood, so it wouldn't impact them as much as if it was along El Camino and along Page Mill. My only concern about Page Mill, if you've ever been on that intersection at 5 o'clock, the amount of traffic that flows down out of the Stanford Business Park and flows toward 101 is tremendous.
Yeah.
And how that would be handled by even larger offices in that area would be a traffic nightmare, I think. But C, I think, is the best choice.
Great, thank you. Okay, so it seems like we have a lot of agreement around C, but with caveat that, like, I think Keith and Yunan both are saying it would be not office in the sense of like a, the office, like a large business office, but more retail like office spaces along Page Mill and El Camino. And then we've got Terry, who again does not support the office, which we heard loud and clear. So it sounds like there's some interest in C, and I think what it demonstrates is there's an interest in C for some of the things that are not homes, or not that we wouldn't have homes there, but things that, you know, would draw people to the neighborhood or even serve the neighborhood would be kind of outward facing. And then maybe the interior of the development is more for homes. Seems to be part of it, which kind of reflects the pattern we have right now, with businesses along El Camino and Real, and then homes kind of behind. So kind of that existing development pattern. Other observations that folks have or questions for each other?
I have one comment. You know, when I read this, I thought it meant adding office space. But if A meant keeping the Cloudera site as it is, where it already has an office, then I would say I'm for that.
Okay, I'll write that down. And I think, you know, part of why we had we're having this conversation is because these things do mean different things to different people. And yeah. I think Unita was saying, you know, based on her previous answer, she's not looking to add any office space. So she's okay with this office space staying at Cloudera, but yeah, not allowing them to add, you know, double their office space, let's say.
Right. I'm for that. I thought when I read it, it meant new office space would be located like in the parking lot.
Yeah, I see. Other observations or comments or questions?
The only thing I would say is I'd like it located as close to functional transit as possible, and the 22 bus, which people keep referencing as El Camino as a transit corridor, is not really a functional transit system because they have very limited runs, or they have limited runs, not very limited. And yeah, while I think of Caltrain as being a much more functional commute system.
Got it. I'm putting that under our comments. Put office near a functional, high quality transit. Angela? Angela, I see your hand.
So I just wanted to ask Keith if his comment regarding facing Page Mill and El Camino is supposed to be there under B, or did he mean it to go under A, Cloudera, which is what I originally thought.
Sorry.
No, I just wanted to check to make sure.
That was my mistake. I asked him if he said Cloudera, and then I put it under the wrong place. Thank you.
I mean, Cloudera, the thing I like about that from a retail is that someone was coming on the train, for example, would be very convenient. But that intersection right there at Park and I guess is that Oregon? What is it?
Yeah.
Or actually, no, that's that the Page Mill comes up and crosses there. But anyway, that small little intersection right by that new restaurant is just so tight. I hate putting any more traffic there, but Cloudera would work for me, but it's not my optimal.
Yeah, they definitely could not have an entrance there, like in terms of cars and stuff. We would not want any more cars to try to come there, I don't think. Okay, so it seems like we have some, I mean, I don't know if any of, I guess one question to ask, we had some folks, we have a bit of synergy around Cloudera, kind of saying, well, you know, like let them keep what they have. It seems like an okay location, or if, you know, they were to change out some of those offices for smaller offices, we'd be okay with that. I don't know if anybody is opposed to Cloudera, which should be letter A, or to C, or wants to speak up for or against any of the other options. I know we had 340 Portage, Park, and Lambert, that one person for each of those spoke up. Do you want to speak to Lambert a little bit, Lakiba, like what you were imagining would be offices on Lambert, or how that would look to you? You're on mute, I think, Lakiba.
Thank you. I would be willing to take my name off of Portage and Lambert.
You don't have to take your name off, but I just don't know if you
strongly enough about them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Alex, did you want to speak at all to Park Boulevard, or are you just said what you had to say?
I think the only thing that I would add on Park Boulevard is that we're looking to having Caltrain operate with electric trains very, very frequently, right? I think maybe every 15 minutes or so. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be noisier just because of the frequency of the trains, but the trains will be quieter because they're electric and not diesel. But if you look at like the new housing project that's there at 195 Page Mill Road, it's got a 300-foot long blank wall because the property owner was worried about noise transmitting into the building. And so we've got like a really ugly facade, but we do have the housing. And so I do worry about that, just having, units pretty close to the train, to the train tracks. And so in my mind, the office is not necessarily a bad fit next to the tracks.
So you're thinking mainly on the one side of the of Park?
Yeah, well,
train side.
So I think the east side is not in the NVCAP boundary, but the other side is.
I think in the boundary, I just think we haven't necessarily addressed it as much. Oh, not on the other side, not on the
Alma.
Yeah, not the Alma side.
And then also when I design neighborhoods, normally we try to put residential facing residential, and we usually try to avoid like residential uses facing office uses. And that's not like set in stone, but that's just sort of like things that we try to do to keep things like the lenders happy. Like they seem to prefer it that way. So that's just in the back of my mind. I'm not really fixed on that particular item. Yeah.
Definitely some interesting perspective for thought. Any questions or responses to that from anybody else?
I find Keith's argument compelling. I mean, Alex's argument compelling. I think that might be a valid use of the east side of Park, at least for some distance. But I believe that it would contribute to poor bike commute quality, and I think that's a higher priority. So
yeah. Yeah. Really quickly, Chitra, I don't know if you saw the email from Cedric saying that the Zoom link is broken. I don't know if you have the capacity to update the website and then send an email to the NVCAP email list that has the right Zoom link in it. Just so in case anybody is trying to participate, we can make sure they have that link.
Okay, I'll try.
I don't know what happened, but if we can update, you just take a look at his email at 6:11 p.m. Okay, so technical difficulties.
Cedric is listed as one of the attendees, right?
Oh, is he? He is here now because we sent it to him, but the website had the wrong, something had the wrong link in it. I'm not sure what he said, but
they are looking at the old 25th email, so
I see.
They should look at the website for today's updated agenda. Has the
okay. Well, if you can just send an email with the right link, that will just help in case anybody. I know I'm always looking for links and like, where is it? So we'll help a little bit with that. Okay. Any other comments on question 3 before we move on? Seemed like we had some, I don't know, I thought it was productive. Okay, we'll go on to question 4. Question 4, 5, and then we're gonna skip to question 9, which is thematically kind of goes along with this idea about height, even though it's not the question that immediately follows. So question 4 says, where should the tallest buildings in NVCAP be located? So if you think of what is the tallest one that you would allow, would it be along El Camino Real, along Page Mill, along Park Boulevard, in the center of the plan, such as along Portage or on the 340 Portage site, throughout the NVCAP area, F, which is a combination of A and B, so El Camino Real and Page Mill, or G, a new solution. So why don't we start with you, Terry, since you went last on the other question.
Let me unmute myself. Okay. Where should the largest buildings be? I think if you were going to make large buildings, I would put them along El Camino and Page Mill. I guess that's F, is that correct?
Yeah.
A combination of F.
Great. Thanks, Terry. Yunan, do you have a place where you would prefer to have the tallest buildings in the NVCAP?
I would put in the center of the plan.
Okay.
Because when I look at this whole area, the existing residents, they are mostly like in Olive, Pepper, Lambert, Park. So I feel in the center is the fair place for all the existing residents to be as far as to the tallest building. If we put it in El Camino Real, it would be too close to some of the existing residents because, and if we look at the area, we don't have much space along El Camino Real for the taller building. Because I also observed the taller building down on the other side of the El Camino Real, where it's in the research park. You see they have a big parking lot along with the tall building, which makes it much open. But if we put now in the North Ventura area, along with the El Camino Real, it's too close to the residents.
Okay.
And it's the same, so that's my same feeling for Page Mill, yeah.
Uh-huh, got it. Kirsten?
Well, I already hit on one. I don't think you can put a tall building next to a narrow street without overpowering the street. And so I would say A and B, which is basically saying F, with the added note that I think that the along El Camino Real might be more for residential with locally serving office or commercial, because that's more constant traffic, middle of the day traffic, while along Page Mill Road is a commute corridor. And so I might say that that might be office and commercial and less focused on tall residential.
Great. Keith?
Yeah, so I would agree that A and B seems to be the logical point, and I agree with Kirsten's point about the other spots are going to overpower the streets. So I think just F.
Great. Lakiba?
My choice is F as well.
All right. Alex?
So my choice is F as well, although I do have some cautions about Page Mill Road. On some of the projects that have been improved there recently, you know, we've been having issues where like the county won't let us put any trees along the frontage. And so I think we have to be really careful about it. I mean, we have to design like the setbacks and the height together.
Is it that they're not, why are they not allowing? Do you mind sharing? Is it?
Because it's an expressway and the trees block the sight lines for the motorists. And so it's been a problem on 2 projects so far. And then they've also taken out all the parking on Page Mill Road. You know, there used to be some parking spots there. I think they're trying to get all of those removed. So I just want to say that there are issues. I think that's conceptually the right. I think F is conceptually the right answer, but we need to look at it more carefully.
Great. So we have a lot of agreement on F. I think Yunan made some interesting points though on D, which I do think also when we saw proposals from working group members, we saw some variation, right? Some put things on the outside and the periphery, and some folks put things towards the center. And so I just wonder what others think about that idea of, again, this is a tall building. And so 340 Portage is, you know, I think it's 12 acres, I think.
Yes.
So just if folks have opinions, like what would you think if a tall building was on 340 Portage? How might you think about that, or caveats or ways you'd like to see it placed or located or not located if it was in the center?
My issue with putting anything tall in the center means that a tall building holds more human beings. More human beings means more transportation, crossing, trying to get in and out. It's the breathing, it's the breathing in and out. And it feels like we have a lot of constrained airways leading to the middle of the site. And yet, so it seems like an illogical place to put density. And I guess the only thing I might add is that if it might be that that was a logical place to put, if the only way to get affordable housing was a taller building along Park, where they might be encouraged to walk to Caldrain as a major part, or take their bikes as a major part of their transportation plan, would be the only part of the 340 Portage site that I might accept height.
Okay. That's interesting. Good point. Did you want to respond to that?
I have one more comment. That is one reason I feel along with El Camino Real and Page Mill might not be realistic is because if I look at now, the current city already have some projects ongoing or the new projects are finished. So I don't think for Page Mill, there's a new place that we can have a new tall building except for the Cloudera lot. And if we look at the El Camino Real on North Ventura project site, it's already quite a lot of projects ongoing, and I don't think we have space to put a tall building there. That's my concern. Yeah.
I see some head nodding to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So good points. Any other thoughts on what if the tall buildings were in the center of the plan? Lakiba, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I am not opposed to in the center of the plan. I had put like a little dot by that. So I could be swayed for that. That one wasn't an absolute no for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna I'm not putting you guys as yes, but I'm saying like maybe these are some like open to considering it, right? Like that's kind of what I heard from you, Kirsten. Like maybe there's some circumstances where we can consider that. And like Kiba, you're saying maybe there's some circumstances where we could consider that. We'd have to come back and understand more about that, I think.
Okay.
Kind of what I hear.
The other thing is height creates visual lack of connection unless it's handled very, very carefully and porously. And I would like to connect Olive and Pepper to the other residential parts of Ventura. And I'm worried that putting height between them and the rest of Ventura creates more barrier.
Can't see I'm typing, but my stuff is going very slowly. Okay. And it kind of popped up there. Great. Any other comments? I think we'll probably move on to the next question, but if there's any other observations or thoughts. Okay.
I have one thought, and that is also, I'm talking about the neighbors on Olive and Pepper and the impact of putting a large building in the center and the effects of shadows and the effects of, lack of sunlight. Those are issues that the neighbors who immediately live in the neighborhood would be greatly affected, I believe, more so than if the buildings were along the edges.
Yeah, I think part of what we would definitely need to do to mitigate the issues that Unit is bringing up, if F, were to be the choice, would be to have certainly some buffering between the building and the homes, and then definitely do some shadow studies to understand what the impacts of those shadows would be, depending on that height. That's a great point. I'm going to go on to question number 5. And question 5 is, so related to that, what's the maximum height that we would allow for that tallest building that you may have imagined in question number 4? 3 stories, 4 stories, 6 stories, 8 stories, 10 or more stories. F is 5 stories, and G is a new solution. So does anybody feel moved to go first? Alex, you're still at the top of my screen, so you get to go first.
Well, okay, so I had asked for F to be added, which was the 5 stories.
Okay.
So just as an architect, with 5 stories, I can still build most of it out of wood. And if you go higher than that, then you're gonna have to do like steel or concrete construction. You're gonna get like a much blockier building. So with 5 stories, you can still add things to it to make it look more like a smaller building. And that's just because of the wood construction. Just as a note, I think most of the buildings, like in Mountain View, are going to like 7 stories. In San Francisco, it's like 7 to 10 stories out of concrete. And they look very different. So, and I think it would be a challenge to get to get people to like the taller buildings.
Okay.
But I'm not opposed to it because we do have examples.
Mm-hmm.
In Palo Alto, we do have some pretty beautiful examples of taller buildings, but that's not what's sort of being built today. So if you think about like San Antonio Road in Mountain View, those are 7-story. The newest ones are 7 stories, and at least in my mind, they're pretty ugly. So.
Well, you are our resident architect, so we will take your opinion.
I'll pass it along.
Okay. Thank you. I learned something too, so thank you for that. Lakiba, did you have preferences for the height of the tallest building?
Okay. First I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The current buildings are how high that are on Page Mill? How high is that Cloudera?
That's a good question. I believe our height limit generally is around 50 feet, which that's the height limit. I don't know how tall the actual building is there. I'd have to go.
Yeah. So actually, I've looked at the plan. So the Cloudera is only 3 stories.
3 stories. There you
and
go.
Then there's the new mixed-use building that's under construction.
How tall will that
now? And that's 3 stories as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and it depends on the zoning. On the height, usually the height is only 35 feet if you're near single-family residential.
Okay. So then I'm leaning toward the 3 stories, unless it ends up on El Camino, and I could be for the 4 stories.
Okay. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm writing the opposite of what you said. El Camino.
I like the idea of affordable housing. And if we convince ourselves that there is no place to put anything taller than 3 stories, I don't believe we'll achieve that. And that is my fear. Therefore, I am going to be maybe the lone voice saying 6 stories with the caveat. I'm very intrigued by what Alex says about 5 stories being more buildable and more buildable with architectural variety. And the caveat also is that I would also strongly advocate that added height, that added density, I guess, bonus that we're giving them would lead to more green space. And if if we get 6-story buildings without green space in the plan, I'm no longer for 6-story buildings.
Got it. So basically it's kind of a going a little bit higher to have a little bit more openness. So instead of maybe a short squat building, it's a little bit taller, but it gives more open space. Great. Keith?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm comfortable with 4 along El Camino, but if we can get more housing or more open space, I would be open to the 5. I do agree with that about Alex's point. San Antonio, those are big buildings down there, and I don't think
they're huge.
At least today, I don't think Palo Alto is ready for that. But the other thing that I'm worried about is that these bigger buildings along El Camino, you do have a step down behind them, not to impact the other residents. But assuming that's not an issue, then I could be persuaded, if it's done right, to go up to 5 along El Camino if we can get housing or open space.
Got it. Great. And maybe there's some connection between the open space and the step back, you know, in terms of that might be an opportunity to some degree to do that. Yunin?
Yeah, so I checked the stories of the buildings along El Camino and Page Mill and Cloudera. They are 3 stories. The Cloudera building looks taller, even though it's 3 stories. So I'm wondering maybe for this height, it can be built for 4 stories for residents. I'm not sure. So I want to choose the 3 stories height, but I'm open to 4 stories because they are not too aggressive. I know how it looks like now with 3 stories, so I think 4 is also okay. And also, I understand for affordable housing, we need to build higher building. So the real question is where, because as the building becomes higher, we need more buffer space. We need more open space alongside this building. We cannot put a 6-story building just next to a 1-story residence. They need some space. So the question is really where we put these tall buildings and how big it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think part of that will connect kind of similar, I think, for you, which again, I appreciate all of you guys are being really thoughtful. So thank you so much. You know, Yunin in her previous question had talked about wanting to have the tallest building concentrated in the center away from the single family homes. And now she's kind of saying, well, if it's going to be on El Camino, for example, what I heard you say, there are already 3 stories, so maybe 4 stories would be okay because 3 stories is kind of working. But I think some good points around how do we balance the height and the open space, you know, as buildings get maybe taller than they are today.
Yeah.
So very thoughtful. Terry?
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay. I think when we're talking about height, we really need to think about another thing, which is neighborhood character. I think it's very important that the neighborhood character of Ventura and Mayfield be in this process, because tall buildings don't necessarily fit in with that neighborhood. I really believe that there's a reason behind the city's 50-foot height limit. And I think that's very important to maintain and to support. That's the reason the city council for many years has done that. I think we really need to think about maybe 3 stories for housing makes the best sense. I live in a 3-story building, and there might be some exceptions along El Camino where 4 stories might work, but at the same time, these would be exceptions to the rule. And we need to think about that before we actually do that. So I would maintain the 3 stories of housing along with neighborhood considerations. I think that's very important.
Great. I put you down, Terry, as 3 stories of housing and then under 4, maybe okay on ECR as exceptions, if that sounds like what you said.
Okay.
Okay, so just reflecting back what we've got 3 folks who are saying, yep, 3 stories. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 people who are saying, you know, some version of 4 stories. Terry kind of like, we need to be sure what that is, maybe think through that through. We got 1 person okay with 6 stories, again, with the caveat that it's leading to directly to more open space. And then with 5 stories, we've got Alex and I heard Keith saying that that would be okay, especially as long as there's more open space. Now, Kirsten, I'm gonna make an assumption, which I don't want to make. So I will ask you, would you be okay also with the 5 stories since you're okay with 6 stories?
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like we have, you know, some grouping around 3, 4, and 5 with 6 as the highest. Any observations for each other, questions or comments?
Rachel?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw out there something is that, say, in Berkeley, there's like a 50-foot height limit in sort of the general downtown area. But they do allow affordable housing projects to go up to 55 feet. So the official height limit is 50 feet. But then because of the density bonus exception that the state requires, then they do allow only those projects that have 4 stories of housing over like 1 story of retail or office. Only those projects can get the extra height limit. And I think it's working pretty well, as best as I can tell.
So that's a great, interesting point. What do folks who were okay with 4 stories think about either 5 stories, that 5th story, let's say as a bonus for affordable housing projects, or even for 6 stories? So there'd be, everybody would get to do either, you could think about a couple ways. One is, you know, 4 stories is the general and the bonus is either to the 5th or 6th story, or 5 stories is the general. And you only get that bonus for that 1 extra floor for affordable housing. What are folks' thoughts about that? And this again, wouldn't be necessarily that everywhere. It's the tallest buildings that are allowed within the NBCAP area.
If we want to encourage below market housing, I think we have to give somewhere, and an extra floor seems reasonable. I get a little nervous for going from 5 to 6. That's a big step.
Mm-hmm.
But going from 4 to 5, if we're getting some BMR housing out of it, that seems possible if it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, the step back in the neighborhood, you have to make it fit with the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
Good architecture. I'm okay with 6 stories for BMR.
Okay.
And good setbacks.
Mm-hmm. Others?
I'll jump in. I do not support the 5 or 6 stories. I think BMR housing can be built without violating necessarily the 50-foot height limit. I believe that enough of BMR, below market rate housing, can be built, and it makes sense to focus on that.
Okay. Anybody else?
For me, this BLM housing, it's already included in my plan. That is, I think these new buildings, they are all for this housing.
Ah, okay. So you've already put it in there, so it's baked into the idea of the plan.
Now we just have to get a developer that wants to build it.
Yeah, right, exactly. We just need some money. And a few other things. Okay. Well, I think that's an interesting new solution, Alex. Thanks for bringing that up. I guess I should put you underneath it since you thought of it. Any other comments on that idea or other ideas or thoughts? All right, so we're making good time. Thank you. And I know, Keith, I think you have to leave for another meeting soon. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for serving on this committee and the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Yeah, I think I'll sign off now, but thank you.
All right, thank you.
And my one caveat would be, if we talk about parks tonight, we really don't want to underpark this area, because across El Camino, we're going to be adding housing. we really need, if anything, to overpark this because this is a contiguous chunk of land which you need for parks. So.
All right. We'll try to hold off on the park questions until you join us again. So.
Wait,
okay.
Oh, I was going to ask him something before he goes, but we're not going to talk about the park?
Well, I was just saying we have a lot of things, so maybe we can try to
work
through it so that we can wait till the park item until he's here with us.
I'll wait until he's here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
guys. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to try to skip over to question 9, which thank you, Angela, for helping us see which questions were thematically related. She gave me a little cheat sheet of questions that might go well together. So we are learning even from our previous meeting. And then Angela Gale, if you hear anything or see anything, because you're kind of outside, not outside, but sometimes when I'm typing and talking, I may not catch everything. So feel free to chime in if you want to make sure that if I'm not catching something or picking up on something. Question 9, housing height limits at Cloudera site. So this is zooming in on one site, Cloudera. So it's assuming that it becomes changed, maybe to housing and or retail with housing with some retail. So imagine that Cloudera site, which I think is, how many acres is Cloudera, teacher? Is it like, is it 10 acres maybe? Maybe it's not 10. It's a big site though. Housing limits at Cloudera site would be no additional housing. So there's no height to be had of housing because there's no housing there. It would be housing housing there would be limited to 3 stories, limited to 5 stories, could be more than 5 stories, or there could be a new solution, such as a range of heights. Because it's a large site, maybe the buildings would have different heights across that site. They wouldn't maybe all be just, the same height. So we have that question. Does anybody feel moved to start? Seeing nobody feel moved to start. There, Kirsten, here we go.
I really like somebody's very thoughtful comment, mostly 3 to 4 stories with 1 or so 5 to 6 story building, which would create a good overall housing density. Park about half an acre or 0.6 of an acre that extends along berm, but pepper should be retained and possibly expanded. I just 100% that, yeah.
Put that under new solution even, because it's a very specific idea under the
I really like it. And I do like the idea of expanding that berm area all the way down to, is it still Arinda or is that birch then?
Expanding the berm.
So if you extended the berm down to the cross street, is that cross street Arinda or is it birch? I believe it's birch.
I think it's birch.
Okay, so if you extend it down to birch and then create some bicycle pedestrian continuity between the rest of the NVCAP site and birch, then that park would be along a route that people would be walking and biking. So I think it allows people to access that berm park and even make it better.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Kirsten. Who else next? Alex?
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on this one. I guess in some of the sketches that I've been doing, I've been thinking that it would be, I guess, a combination of somewhere in between A and C. So I was thinking like 4-story housing plus a park. But I'm flexible on this one.
Okay. I'm just gonna put that under new solution. And so when you say A and C, is that because the park area would have no additional housing in it? Is that kind of what you mean?
No, let's see. Well, I was thinking, I've been thinking that there should be a park at the corner of Olive and Pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I think the Creekside Park is going to be pretty far away. I think I've read that the distance to a park doesn't have to be, it can be longer, you know, it doesn't have to be a short distance if it's walkable. So if there were a path, you know, if there was a pedestrian way to the creek, then there'd be less of a need for a park at Olive and Pepper. But also there, I guess as I've been looking at the plans or the aerial photos, there are lots of mature trees in the berm, and I'd like to keep some of them. And it seems to me that—
I think you might mean birch and pepper, because Olive and Pepper—
Oh wait, Olive and Pepper, I'm thinking ash.
Ash.
I guess I'm thinking ash and olive. That corner, but there's the berm around the Cloudera site, and there are a lot of big trees in there, on there. And it seems to me to be a desirable place to create a park, since you already have the mature trees. And then it also makes sense to me to add housing there in the parking lot.
Got it. I'm just going to bring up the site since we're talking about it. Sometimes it's nice to have it. So we'll just, oh goodness. My shortcut to get to NBCAP area, just type in 340 Portage, if I can spell it properly. So it would be that there'd be office remaining, there'd be some office, there'd be additional housing, and there'd be a park, which makes sense. Okay, Yunan?
For this one, I would vote for A. I think it's also consistent with my other previous answers to no new office and keep Cloudera as is. And I also noticed for Cloudera parking lot, it's pretty nice for existing residents. We always take a walk there, and some kids just playing there. There's a small creek there. It's dried with a lot of stones and small bushes there. So it's kind of a nice place. I think can be enlarged to a park. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Lakiba, did you go yet? You didn't share yet, did you?
Yes. Okay. I also choose A. Similar reasons. The neighbors really, especially now that everybody's home, uses that corner, that whole area as a park. So making it even more of a park would be great. And I had already said I didn't want additional housing on that lot.
Okay. All right. And then Terry.
Okay, I chose B. I think, again, you're trying to maintain somewhat the neighborhood character along Olive and Pepper. And also in my neighborhood, Mayfield, which has 3-story housing, although offices might work along the edge where the Cloudera building is right now. But if we're just talking about housing, I would pick B.
Great. All right, thank you everyone for sharing. Observations, questions for each other, other reflections? I think one thing that makes me curious is to think about Lakiba and Yunan, you guys are both residents, and so it's really important, I think, for all of us to understand your perspectives and your experiences. When you think about the Cloudera building's future, do you just see it staying the same, but with the park there, or how would you see that land changing or not changing? Oh, Lakiba, you went on mute. You were off mute previously. There you go.
I could be talked into housing on the Page Mill side because that's still far from Olive and a little far from Pepper. I'd say my ideal is no housing with a park there. But I certainly understand the need for housing. And if we weren't able to get housing in the other areas, I could potentially go for housing out toward Page Mill.
Okay. And that'd be because it's further from the existing houses.
Correct.
And then I think, I don't know, if you have any reflections on kind of what you see as the future of that site, assuming that at some point in the future, it's not maybe the same as it is today. Would you want to see, either, I think we didn't want any more offices, but then I'm curious, you don't want housing either. So just how you envision that site, what it would become.
So you mean if Cloudera if that whole block was just open and it could be anything, do you mean that?
I do mean that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I guess part of what I'm curious about is, part of the whole premise of the area plan process is like changing the underlying zoning and what's allowed, hopefully in a way that leads to something new being there.
Okay.
Yeah. So what would you, if something new was there, what would you want it to be? It could be a mix of housing, office, and park, for example, is kind of what I'm hearing, but just curious.
I think because now there is housing across the street from Cloudera that I've gotten used to. You know what I mean?
This one here?
Yeah, it's on Park and Page Mill. And now it's been there for a while. So I'm used to that being in the neighborhood, if you will. I could see a future where the corner where Cloudera is, that could be housing. That could be a combination of business and housing. And I would prefer that corner because it's the furthest corner.
I see. Yeah, here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, when you think about the future of that site?
Yeah, so I think for the current building, I'm okay if it becomes a residential building, or it can be a larger one. Now it occupies around like 1/6 to the lot, so it can be enlarged to like 1/3 size. But I want it to be placed on that corner, so the rest of the area can become a park or open space.
Okay. Thoughts or questions from others for those ideas? I'm just going to write that under the comments. I guess I wonder, when you think about if there were a new building, or it could be a set of buildings, however they design it, that is situated at that corner of Page Mill and Park, what's that height limit there? Is it 3 stories? Is it 5 stories? Is it 4 stories?
It seems like the building that's across is a little taller, is it, than Cloudera? The building across that is housed and has the restaurant underneath?
Ooh, I think it might be 4 stories.
No, it's actually only 3 stories.
Oh,
there's a tower on the corner. It frames it a bright color, so you sort of see the extra height.
Yes.
But it's only 3 stories. It's two floors of residential over R&D space. And the Cloudera building is taller because it's an office, and also they have an auditorium on the ground floor. that requires like a higher ceiling.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So if that be, well, I don't, architecturally, would they tear that down and build? Or is there a way to turn that?
This
I'm
building?
trying to figure out how high it, yes.
They would probably tear down the building to turn the site to housing.
Okay.
It's unlikely that they would like retrofit the existing building to become housing.
You know, I could personally, I could potentially go in that 5-story arena. If it was some kind of mixture between housing and like how across the street there's housing and there's that restaurant that's on the bottom floor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I might suggest that if you wouldn't mind putting in the notes that monolithic, we haven't talked about massing, but monolithic 5 stories would be less preferable than a sort of a permeable or a broken mass 5-story building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so more permeable buildings. And just before I get that, Yunin, when you think about if there were to be housing, and my spelling is terrible, if you think about housing becoming, or the site becoming something other than what it is, so you said kind of it's got a 6 of the park, a little area taken up. Let's say it comes to like a third. I don't know if you agree. It seemed like maybe with Akiva's idea that the building would be pushed further away from the residential that exists. What height would you see that being? 5 stories, 3, 4? What do you kind of envision?
Yeah, I feel this office building, although it's 3-story, it's taller than the other residential condo building. So I think with this height, maybe we can build 4 stories. So and I can add 1 more story there. So like 5-story
Yeah.
residential is okay for me.
Okay, that makes sense. I think that kind of I think, and part of one of the things we talked about in the other work group, which we'll try to incorporate as we progress forward, is thinking about the overall height, not necessarily the number of stories. I think to me, stories is more accessible than thinking about the height of a building. I'm like, how tall is a 100-foot building? Like, I don't know. But I can think about a 10-story building much more easily than I can a 100-foot building. But then when you look at different types of uses, I think as Alex was showing, and as we see, that building is 3 stories, but it's, higher than a 30-foot building. So it's not exactly the 10-foot equals 1 story thing. Doesn't always hold for commercial. Yeah, so that's great. And then I got your question about massing, important permeability of the buildings is important. Do folks have any comments on kind of this idea that we've been talking about with Lakiva and, Gail, go ahead, Gail. People can feel free to jump in. You guys are very respectful of each other, but I'm typing and can't always see your faces at the same time. So go ahead, Gail. You're on mute though.
You didn't go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my question of Rachel is, are you imagining that the product after this process may result in a range of heights, a range of densities on different sites, rather than the product being prescriptive of X height or X stories, since this is a long-range plan?
Probably. I mean, I think our NVCAP area is not the biggest area ever, but it's still 60 acres that has quite a diversity across it. I don't think it'd be unusual for plans like ours to have different parcels have different height limits that are associated with them based on some of the things we're talking about. And I think specifically with the Cloudera site, because of its size, it would seem even appropriate there that some portions of it may have different heights. We don't want to go crazy with it, so you have some weird patchwork of buildings, but you know, we may say that the building steps down closer to Olive if there's a building, or that there's a quite the buffer of open space, which we've talked about, that would buffer back future housing. So I don't know if that answers your question, Gail.
No, I guess my question, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I guess my question is a range within some parcels or assembly of parcels, rather than being absolutely prescriptive, and we're dealing with over the long haul. And that's just a clarification question. I think I've raised this before, but anyhow, we should proceed with the discussion. But I certainly know I'm thinking in terms of a range, but we're not there yet, and I will stop because other people need to make comments.
Yeah, I think a range could be what we do. I would still see a range though as having a limit, right? So even if you say, well, the range here is 3 to 6 stories, well, then the limit is 6. So, you know, it still has an upper bound, and then that becomes the limit. So we wouldn't want whatever that limit is to be, people have opinions about what the limit should be. And so, yeah.
Rachel, can I throw out something
Yep.
for you? So in Mountain View's San Antonio master plan, they have like a base amount of zoning allowance with the height. So, and it's pretty low, like 3 stories. And then they say you can go up an additional story or even 2 sometimes if you build a plaza or a park, or you have some sort of amenity, or sometimes the developers are like paying for a park on a different piece of land. And so you get the height, you actually have to get the extra height, you actually have to provide some sort of public benefit. And so then that gives you the variety, because some developers don't really want to pay for all the amenities and they want to just do something fairly straightforward and that follows the zoning. And then the other ones are willing to wheel and deal and try to do a bigger project. And in the city, and I think there's more review, like the taller you go, the higher up to the city council you have to go to get approval.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of variation of the idea you had before about the affordable housing, like you trade off, but maybe for other things like open space. Kirsten?
I'm very okay with that for affordable housing. My concern is that the courtyard that's used by the Cafe Macchiano or whatever it's called is technically a public park. That was a public benefit, and they basically took it over as seating for the restaurant. No one walks in there when no one feels comfortable walking in there. And there's been other public benefit. The Gross Out building, the Grocery Outlet building, which was another market, has public meeting rooms as a public benefit, but they're quite expensive. And so they sit empty. And so my concern with allowing zoning overages to get public benefit is that it has to have teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there can be definitely a poor experiences with some of the public benefits that we can ask for, and so how to maintain them in their intended purpose over time.
Can I make a comment too?
Yeah.
Okay, my comment is when we're studying these height variations and stuff, one thing that's a total mystery, I think, to all of us on this working group is we don't understand, or we don't have the knowledge or background or the studies or the information about transportation and about traffic patterns and how size, you know, if we add this size or add this story, how that impacts traffic. And as everybody knows, this corner, El Camino and Page Mill, is the busiest corner in Palo Alto. And so and sometimes we're dealing in the blind here, because I think it's important to have this information so we have some concept of what adding a extra story or adding 3 extra stories or whatever, what that really means.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a great point, Terry. I think that's an excellent point. I wish I wish I was a traffic engineer or somebody who could calculate that stuff easily. And I wish we had more budget to get more feedback from our experts. Unfortunately, the best we can do is develop what we think are our ideal plans and work to study the traffic impacts and look at what are the mitigations that could, if there are impacts, which there will be some impacts, how we can mitigate those impacts, and can we mitigate them through different, either improvements, infrastructure, things like that. So I hear you, and I, wish I had more skills myself to help with that issue. So we've had a couple ideas that have circulated for this particular topic, which again is kind of thinking about the Caldera site and what might be the height of housing if housing was added to the site. We had 2 folks who kind of developed a little bit of a different thought pattern around the no housing, and it's kind of like maybe housing if it kind of is located within that site in a particular way, which I appreciate that conversation. Terry thought, 3 stories would maintain the neighborhood character. We had one person, which was Kirsten, pick up on this idea of mostly 3 to 4 with 5 to 6, kind of with this park idea, which I think kind of aligns a little bit, Alex, with what you were saying of kind of like, maybe there's a trade-off in terms of there's the 3 to 4 stories allowed, but maybe the 5 to 6 is if it's affordable, right? So there's kind of this, you can get more perhaps for some other public benefit, which affordable housing is a little bit easier to track than people commandeering a courtyard for themselves. And then we talked about also, I think with Unit and with Lakiba kind of maybe pushing some of the larger massing of housing towards that Page Mill and Park area to be further away from the homes. And also I think partly to preserve some open space perhaps, because I think everyone mentioned some open space on that parcel, and that's clearly an idea that folks are supportive of. Are there any other ideas that people want to express, or do they want to give any support for other people's ideas to say, yes, they also agree with that, or that they disagree with something? But if there's an idea you saw that you're like, yep, I also support that idea, love to hear that.
Just want to, I can't quite see your notes because they're tiny, but I want to make sure that it's, no, it's not your thing. It's because I've got my pictures of my people big.
Okay.
I wanted to see if it's recorded that connectivity to whatever future park, which I do support on that site, is good for bicycles and pedestrians to enter and flow through the rest of the site.
Yep. I will get that. I have that under yours, but I'll put it also just under the general notes. There we go. I'm realizing also that it's 7:25 and I did not build in a break for us. I forgot, but my body is telling me I need one. So I would like to suggest either a 5 or a 10-minute break so that we can go do whatever you need to do and come back. Do people have a preference for 5 minutes? The other group did 5 minutes. Okay, 5. Kirsten, you're a woman after Angela's heart. She said 5 as well. So 5-minute break. Please come back at 7:30. And we'll start again. if any working group members have come back, when you do, just maybe share your screen or share your screen, either go on video or go off mute. Just let us know you're here when you do arrive. We'll give folks a few minutes. Thanks, Terry. I think I saw your hand to say you're here. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay, I think we are all here. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Okay, so the next few questions, so I want to just real quick before we get started. One, I'm eating, so apologize for my rudeness of eating a snack while we're on video. So thank you for bearing with me. And then we did get some members of the public who joined us late. I'm sorry for those who had a hard time finding the link. It was on the agenda for today's meeting because there was a subcommittee meeting last week as well. And so this is, there was a different link for today's meeting. But we're glad you found it, and we will definitely have some time for public comment, oral communications at the end of the meeting. So we'll make sure we end around 8:15 to make sure we have plenty of time for that, for oral communications. So we're now turning to question 6. This question says density by areas of inspiration. So this was where we had some images of some of the cities that working group members had suggested that they liked and kind of might be aspirational for the NBCAP to pursue imitating. So these were population densities within that area. 1.4 per square mile as recommended by Palo's comprehensive plan. 9 to 11,000 per square mile, such as Emeryville, downtown Palo Alto, and Oak Park, Chicago. 13 to 17 per square mile, which is similar to the Pearl District and to Cambridge, Massachusetts. So does anybody feel moved to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
Okay, this kind of goes back to what I said earlier about keeping neighborhood character in mind. And that is, I think, you know, this is important to the people in Ventura, and it's important to the people, and even in my neighborhood, Mayfield, that we not be surrounded by other things that don't look right, don't look like our neighborhood. I think that most people expect a neighborhood to be similar to what they already live in. That's the reason they chose to live in that area. So I think the best choice in terms of the choices is A, because again, the comp plan was something that was developed over many, many years. And if you were a part of that, I wasn't, but I participated in knowing how it was put together. And so I realized what a struggle it was to do that. And I realized how important of a document it is. And they did this with the Ventura neighborhood in mind. So I think A is the best choice for density.
Great, thank you, Terry. All right, I'm just calling people. Kirsten?
Well, I thought I would listen to everyone else first.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll come to you last. I'll come to you last. Lakiba.
Okay. I also selected A. But you know, I am familiar with Emeryville, of course, downtown Palo Alto, and the Pearl District. And they do each kind of have their something that I'm attracted to in each of them. But still, even with that said, I chose A.
Okay, I'll just put you under A and say also some attraction.
Yeah.
To aspects of Emeryville. Oops.
The Pearl District is somewhere I like to go visit, but not necessarily live.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's also more to those areas than just the population, right? So
yes,
have affinity for things that are there that we might want to understand more about.
Absolutely.
Great. Yunin?
I also choose A. The reason is I echo what Terry said, and also because this is recommended by the comp plan, and they do had done research, and they had a data as their how they come out this plan. And as a group member, I have a lot of expectation and imagination, but I don't have any knowledge on this. So back to the plan, I would trust what people had done research on these.
Great, that makes a lot of sense. Alex?
Okay, so I was actually thinking of somewhere between B and C. So like my family is originally from Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is a college town. And they lived on the lower density side of town. And so it is on that lower limit of C. So I think it's around like the 13,000 people per square mile. And I actually really liked it because there are like, in today's prices, there's like 1-bedroom units that are $500,000 to buy. And then there are also mansions similar to what's in old Palo Alto that are like $8.5 to $10 million. There's a variety of building types, just from like Victorians to 7-story apartment buildings. And they're all brick apartment buildings. And it all works, that they all fit together. It doesn't seem like there's anything's out of place. It feels like they've sort of grown together in the the low density and the high density mixed together. And I think you see similar things like that in San Francisco, like in the Marina and Pacific Heights. And somehow in Palo Alto, just people think that everything has to be low scale. And I just don't really agree with that at all. And by doing that, you actually get a diversity of housing types and a diversity of incomes.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Kirsten?
I guess I would say between A and B, so maybe up to the low side of B. I agree with the idea of mixed proportion buildings being good design solves problems. Good design can make things go together. And so we don't have control over the design, but we can do zoning to allow the design that hopefully we'll be involved in, or other committed citizens will be involved in, to make it beautiful. And I think that following the comp plan is exactly how we got to the worst jobs housing imbalance of almost any city in the entire Bay Area. And to the point where my children can't afford to live here. And if we continue to just say, oh, let's follow the comp plan, we're basically saying, oh, you person that works at Starbucks, you person that works at the grocery store, it's okay with me. What I want, low level buildings, is more important than you having an affordable house. And I believe there is a direct connection between allowing some higher density and affordability. And because of that, I would say B.
Okay. So I'm just noticing we have 3 folks who put A, it's number 1 here, but A, we've been using letters. A, for a variety of reasons, both the comp plan had a lot of work going into it, had a lot of research. but also like keeping in there's aspects of these other areas that are attractive as well. And then Alex and Kirsten kind of saying, well, Kirsten saying kind of between A and B, and that design can help to improve some of the things we may not like about density, and could help us move further from our jobs, housing imbalance, like could correct that balance, which also could help with affordability. And Alex saying, you know, he liked growing up in Cambridge, which had a higher density and also had a range of housing styles from different eras, different sizes, and it kind of all fit together as it grew up over time. Obviously, Cambridge, a much older city than Palo Alto. Observations that you have, questions for each other, maybe want to persuade someone to their side or tease out any of the other working group members.
One suggestion to, if one encourages smaller scale development, meaning smaller lots developed at one time, one is more likely to get a diverse architectural style rather than allowing monolithic developments, because those cover a large area and have a very consistent style across the building. So a single building that's a couple of blocks long obviously is more boring and less diverse than multiple small lots that across the same length of distance that were developed at different times. So anything we can do to encourage smaller developers to participate in the development process, I think might add architecturally to the diversity of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
If I could make a comment too.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with people too much, but I mean, I can't, the issue of the comprehensive plan and how that was put together should not be diminished by this group, because it involved, I believe, at least 35 people, maybe more, of community members. And it was a long struggle of more than, I think, over 2 years. And so there was compromises made, and there were decisions made that that made you know, good decisions in terms of housing and also in terms of supporting the city. So I think it's important to realize that you know, it isn't just a closet group of people that put the comp plan together. And it isn't, you know, these people worked very hard and were diligent, and they do care about housing. They just have a different view of it. That's all. So that's my take on it.
Okay, that's helpful. I think I'm going to move on from this question, because I think in some ways this question is kind of like an overview, in that none of our zoning is going to necessarily say this is the number of people that are going to be here, but it just kind of give us as a group a sense of where each of us are as we head into some of the other questions, right? Of like, how do we envision this area being, and like, what do we want it to be like? And so I think it's informative for our level setting of where we are starting this discussion from. Does that sound okay to folks? Unless anybody else has any comments on it. Okay. So we'll move on to number 7. So I slowly move on. Okay, so this is overall housing density by dwelling units per acre. And so this is kind of saying, if you know, we had our dream plan, your dream plan, and it came to fruition and it had a mix of housing and retail and office to whatever degree you wanted, and open space, and you can imagine that, what would be the dwelling units per acre if you averaged it out across the entire 60 acre plan area? So that is, you know, every ounce of building is not necessarily dedicated to housing and dwelling units. So the options are less than 20 acres, less than 20 dwelling units per acre, 21 to 40 dwelling units per acre, 41 to 75 dwelling units per acre, 76 to 100 dwelling units per acre, or more than 100 dwelling units per acre. And then F should be consistent with other mixed use areas in Palo Alto, and G, of course, option for a new solution. So anybody want to go first? Kirsten.
This one I am prepared for. I have
All right.
stronger opinions on this one. I think that B is definitely my answer. Maybe it would have to be exceptional projects for me to accept 40 units, dwelling units per acres, but I could accept them with well-designed solutions. Again, this goes back to what I was saying about allowing further density if it allows two goals, open space and affordable housing. Because that, I guess those are kind of my primary goals in this area. And in order to allow some possibly edging up towards 40 units per acre projects, and we had some very good pictures of very acceptable projects within Palo Alto that were at that density and higher in the actual questionnaire that we did. I wish we had those to look at here. Those pictures were very useful. And it would allow there to be other areas that are less dense, meaning that the olive and pepper, which are quite a bit under 40 units per acre, to stay less dense, to keep their less density while the project overall has increased density.
Great, thank you, Nikki, for calling time. I'm gonna try to navigate to that document while I'm also listening to you all. So anybody wanna go next? Lakiba?
Okay, so ideally I chose A. However, I'm also a little bit into B.
Okay. Do you want to speak to your options?
I want to give opportunity, I guess I would say, for there to be, to satisfy the needs of maybe the lower income people who would want to live in the area. You mentioned your son, my son also, professional, but had to move because he couldn't afford to live in Palo Alto. So I tend to go for less density. However, I'm being stretched a little bit so I could stretch into B.
Okay, so I'm gonna put that same kind of rationale down on B for us.
I'm just gonna say one thing. There's a concept, a phrase, hometown. What does it mean to have a hometown? And in order for there to be a hometown, there has to be a continuity between generations, and that's been broken.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's very powerful. Kind of hit me, man, like a Hallmark card. Jeez, Kristen.
For real?
You didn't know that was my day job, right?
Man, jeez Louise. Okay, wasn't ready for that one. All right, Alex?
So I haven't really thought about the overall housing density, but I did look up some projects that I like, and I did calculate the density for those like individual projects. And so if I'm just looking at the individual projects, I'm okay with C. And I think I do agree with everybody about, trying to preserve the existing single family residential, which will bring it down. Overall density down. But I would just mention the projects that I think are good are like Madera and Mountain View, which is 62 units per acre. I also like Crescent Village in San Jose, which is 56 units per acre. In Palo Alto, I kind of like the 800 High Street, which is 63 units an acre. I get worried about projects. So like there's the new Dean in Mountain View on San Antonio Road, and that's like 100 units per acre. And that's the 7-story project. We have the new micro housing project on the corner of Page Mall and El Camino. Those are like micro units, and that's at 127 units per acre.
Do you like that or you don't like that project?
Well, I voted for it. And so, but that's not the overall density. That's just, you know, per project. It's not an overall neighborhood density.
I just want to make sure I was capturing that you were giving examples of projects that you did like.
Yeah, I'm just saying that there in the overall, I'm giving you individual projects and then somehow we blend it all together and you come up, I guess I come up with C.
Got it.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of C. But I haven't, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great. Yunin, did you go yet?
No.
Okay.
So ideally, for me, it's A. But and I also have questions. So this is the overall density. It also including everywhere, like so just like the office area divided by all the residential unit, or it's just
So basically, you take you would say, you know, here's our plan, you know, and there's this much office, there's this much residential, blah blah blah. There's all these different, this much parkland, etc., this much parking, and then we'd say, well, how many units are there allowed there? There's, you know, 600 units divided by 60 acres. So all the units total divided by the entire plan area.
Okay. Yeah, so I can also stretch to be, yeah. So what is the density number in whole Palo Alto?
I don't know what it is for the entire city. Sorry, Angela, did you have a hand that you were responding to Yunan's question?
I just wanted to say overall units, overall housing units, yes.
Yes.
For the whole whatever number of acres, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think Yunan understood that, so I don't.
Yeah, got it. Oh, here we go. I found what I'm looking for. We'll go back to that in a second. I don't know what the overall, if you took the whole city, what our average dwelling units per acre is.
I think it will be pretty low because there is so much of R1 residential zoning throughout the city. So
yeah, it would be pretty low overall, but we're mostly zoned, mostly, but a lot of our housing is in single family zoning, so it kind of skews very low.
Yeah. Yeah, ideally it's for me it's A, but I can stretch to B. It depends on what is the design, how they design this housing.
Yeah. And I think, I'm sorry, now I'm talking with my mouth full. It's getting worse. Sorry, y'all. So can you guys see this other window that I'm bringing up? It's very tiny, probably. I'll make it bigger. Oh, no, it's not.
No, we can't.
Shared is paused. Bring your shared window to the front. Do that. Click. Resume share. New share. Oh, I learned something new. Okay. Now you can see this tiny thing. This is something we have put together, kind of similar. It's not exactly like Alex, what he was doing, but it just shows you actual different buildings in Palo Alto specifically, that if you wanted to go on a little tour or something, or you may be familiar with them already.
Can you share that link?
Yes, I will. And it's the last 2 pages of this document, though. It's 40 pages. This is the last 2 pages. So it tells you what the name of the development is, where it's located, the total number of units that are there, and then the dwelling units per acre, and then how many stories it is. So you can kind of see what that looks like and just get a sense for how these numbers translate into real life experiences. So some of these you may be familiar with already from living in Palo Alto. I think some of these maybe you mentioned, Alex. Are you seeing some of them? Did you say 800 High Street?
He did.
You're on mute, but I see you saying yes. And then I don't know if any of these other ones were ones you mentioned, Alex.
Yeah, so there's definitely some overlap, Rachel. And then I think that some of the projects that I mentioned are relatively new. And I picked them out because they have really good landscape in addition to whatever the density is of the architecture.
Could Alex share his list also?
Yeah, Alex,
will try to
do that.
Yes, I will try to do that.
It can even be just as simple as the addresses, and we'll share them out with everybody. So this is just another tool we can use as we have our discussions. Let me see if we'll go back to the other screen. Well, I think I have to, can you see this one now too? Google Map or Google, okay, great.
No.
You cannot?
Okay. No.
New share. Well, it's very good. It protects your privacy, but I have to remember to toggle back and forth between them. All right. And then Terry, did you want to share your thoughts? And if you are talking,
yes,
Terry.
I do.
Okay.
This was a very difficult question to answer, and I'll tell you why. Because I am not an expert in land use or how units look on an acre. And I think I would like to recommend to Angela and maybe to Gail that we have a further discussion on this and an understanding better of what this actually looks like. Because it is a difficult question to answer, I think. And I hope that we can talk about this some more. But look, in general, I'll just tell you my general views. RM30 is what it's currently zoned, and I would be supportive of something similar to that. However, one important point I think we're kind of missing here, and I'd like to bring it up now, which is this current pandemic that we're all living in. It should give each of us some pause and some deep concern about increasing housing densities. The more dense we have our housing, the easier it is for transmission. And we should keep these densities as low as possible. I realize that we need some density for sure, but we also need to keep in mind the current situation we're in and how this impacts everything we're doing in our lives. So I hope that that's something, maybe we can include that in our further discussions at a later time as well.
Yeah, certainly. I will only say I live in the densest city in California, and our transmission rates have been very low up until we've had the protests and until we've had people visiting their families, nursing homes, and prisons are actually our upticking marks. So I think density certainly is important, but I don't know that just living in a city or living in a rural area prevents you or inclines you to get coronavirus. Angela?
Yes, I take Terry's point. I think those photographs that you just shared with us a moment ago could help us see partly what it would look like, but also if you wanted to see, Terry, what an entire development at different densities would look like. All of the proposals that we shared last month, proposals, what was it, G through M, all of those actually put a density in there. So you could actually see, and they range from about 22 to much more than that, up to about 70, I think, for the whole NVCAP. And they're approximate because, you know, we aren't experts, but they do give a sense of the density, what it looks like over the whole area. And you can sort of, you can see what it looks like.
Yeah. And I'm with you, Terry. I am a planner, but I am not I'm a long range planner for a reason. I'm not an architect. So I need to see those example buildings to really get a sense of what does this mean to have this many units on an acre.
And if anybody wants to see my complex where I live, I'm in Palo Alto, so you're welcome to come here.
Okay, cool.
I actually have one more question here.
Yeah.
Because based on if I look at these projects, I feel I'm okay with the density like 30 to 40 DU8, but we are not going to put all the area with the buildings, right? So when we think about average, that will be lower, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's part of you are correct. And I think that's part of the challenge, not challenge, but kind of what we're teasing out is like, first, how many people do we think we want to have living in the area? And that's still not even the number of people. It's like a rate, right? The number of people per square mile is a rate. Yeah. This is the number of dwelling units per acre. And as you saw, some of those buildings have more dwelling units per acre in terms of the rate, but they have a lower number of units, right? So the rate of it, and let me just go to it real quick, because I think this is also where the other group we had a lot of discussion. And so, can you see this one now too? Do you have to go switch? Share screen. Okay. I'm becoming a Zoom whiz. Here we go. So for example, this one has that this building is built at the rate of 20 dwelling units per acre, and it's got 9 units in it. So there's the difference too, like to remember like the rate of what that that rate of what it would be if that building was built out over acre is obviously going to be less. I shouldn't say obviously, it could be less than the number of units that are actually there. So then if we think about the number of people, well, the number of people that are going to live in this building are going to be, 9, let's say, times the average number of people in a dwelling unit, 2.5, versus 20 times 2.5. So there's kind of this relationship that's, we're kind of coming at it from different angles, right? We're asking how many people do you think you want per square mile? What kind of dwelling unit per acre do we want to get to? And we may have some buildings that have way higher dwelling unit per acre, but, it's not going to be the entire project area of that same building and that same dwelling unit. So this building, Mayfield Place, obviously has a higher number of units, 70, and it's at 40 dwelling units per acre. And then some of them, here's one at 60, 62, this one's at 89, and then some that are at lower ends of the spectrum. And Alex, I don't know if you have any other help for us as we're you hear people talking about kind of thinking about these concepts, ways that you've learned to think about them or that you find helpful when trying to think about the dwelling units per acre and then kind of the building translation.
Oh, right. So I had sent in a note for everybody I recommended reading a Jane Jacobs book, the Death and Life of Great American Cities. And she has a very nuanced position on the density. It's not one size fits all, but you do need the density able to get diversity. So I do, yeah. It's a land, it's a, what do we call it? It's a classic textbook for urban planners, and it does address suburban situations as well. So it's not just about big cities. Right. And then I think on the numbers here, Rachel, I think the density, it really varies depending on whether you're doing studio apartments or like luxury 3-bedroom apartments. It has a huge impact on the number, but it doesn't necessarily affect the size of the building or what the building looks like. So the numbers are sometimes deceiving.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point too. Yeah. So I think the point is we're trying to get to a sense, not necessarily a specific like this is it, but overall what the sense is. Sounds like a lot of us had, we had some people stretching into the 21 to 40 range. We've got Kirsten, Lakiba, and Yunan, and then Terry's saying kind of more towards the 30 dwelling units per acre, which is in that range. And then, oh my gosh, I don't know why I said C, that's not your, Alex, looked at, oh, I didn't go back to the other thing. Okay. Are you all, no, it didn't change. Sorry, one moment. Can you see that Google Doc now again?
Yes.
Okay. So we had Alex here at letter C.
Yeah, although Rachel, if I'm reading B again, mm-hmm. You're saying high density up to 65 units per acre, averaged with lower density. Mm-hmm. I think that's what I was arguing for.
Okay.
So I think that I'm actually B when I missed that last line there. But I'm willing to go, I guess that's my base and I'm willing to stretch to C.
Okay, so I'll put you, let's see. And I'll kind of put you right next to this last particular one that I think you're kind of referencing.
Great.
So it seems like we actually have a lot of synergy and consensus in the group around this topic, which I think is really great and a kind of a good place for us to be. All right, it's 8:06. We can maybe peek at one more question. We may not finish it, and then we'll head to our oral communications. So question 8 was looking at kind of similar, building on the building typology idea. You know, which building typologies would you like to see? And then it also tried to kind of pair that with our favorite Lego blocks that we had from Perkins and Will. Actually, let me see if I can share this. Can you guys see both of these screens now?
No.
What do you see?
Yeah, it's better. It's the previous screen of the Palo Alto example, multiple family example. That's the one.
Okay.
That's overlapping the actual.
Great, perfect. Okay, so I'm just trying to scroll. Pardon while I scroll. I know it's really distracting and not great experience. And now I've scrolled too far, I think. Did I?
No, it's up.
Okay. She sure knows these documents back and forwards. What page is on what? So this is these building typologies, if you recall, from the survey. Oh, no, I'm going too far. So here's kind of what they are: the townhomes, low-rise greenway, low-rise block, neighborhood serving commercial, the low-rise block plus neighborhood serving commercial, and then the mid-rise block, which was, this is 3 stories, 4 stories, 4, 5 stories, and then 8. And then this is 33 dwelling units per acre, 107, 124, 147, and then 159 dwelling units per acre. So I'll just kind of leave that over here on the side of the view. So in case you need to refer to that, please feel free to do so. So anybody feel motivated to start on this one? I'm gonna go to Yunin first. Yunin, are you taking a break? If you're not there, it's okay. She might be on a break right now. So Alex, as our resident architect, you get to go first on this one.
Okay, so you know, I had mentioned that Jane Jacobs' book during the last question, and she's adamant that you actually have to have a variety of housing types, building types, and of all different ages, you know, new buildings and old buildings. So I guess the one that's closest to that would be F, right? Which is all of the above.
Great.
You want a diversity of incomes, building types, housing types, ages, incomes, everything, races. Yeah.
Great. Lakiva?
Okay, I also chose F. Before I saw what those actually looked like, but it looks like I'm still in agreement with F. It just seemed almost intuitively that different building type sizes would work best.
Great, thank you. Kirsten?
I feel strongly that F is the best solution, but I would like to make a comment that a lot of people didn't like block buildings because they block, as I talked about tall buildings, block the flow. So with good design, F can work, but you know, it takes some vigilance that each approved project becomes a contributing structure to the vision for the neighborhood.
Great. Yunin?
Yeah, I also feel it should be a mix kind of buildings. And for the block one, I just feel it's not open enough. I feel, I don't know, because I visit some of my friends, they live in condo, like this block building, they just say they never go to the green area, the small green area in the middle. So I would think it should be open so all the people, they can just hang out in the open space.
Mm-hmm. And then Terry?
Okay, I went with A. And I'll just mention very briefly alternative M, which we put together, a group of us, to think about how we could use this site, particularly the Fry's building, in adaptive reuse for one thing we really haven't mentioned a lot of, which is below market rate housing. And I think that is something we really need to consider and talk about. But I would support A.
And then would you, just to make sure I'm understanding, are you suggesting that the Fry site would be some other type of housing that wouldn't be townhomes, and townhomes would be in the other areas? Am I hearing that correctly?
Say again, I didn't understand your.
Sorry, I just was trying to pick up on your thread about the cannery building. And so I heard you saying that part of the proposal M was to have that be adaptively reused as housing. So yes. I'm assuming that wouldn't become a townhome. It would be some other type. It would be like an apartment or condo housing. And then townhomes would be in other parts of the area.
Yes, I would say that, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, we just are at time for oral communications, but I think we can stop here and we can easily pick up at this question, not without leaving too much kind of on the table, if you will, or kind of on the tips of our tongues. Let me just try to write what Terry said. And then Angela and Gail, before we go to oral communications, if there's any comments you'd like to provide or just observations to the group, just welcome that from you.
I just want to thank everybody for their great respect for the time and the energy of everybody, and also for their very thoughtful responses. I feel like we've made great progress on making it really clear how people feel. So thank you all. You guys are great.
Great. Gail?
Yes, I won't repeat everything Angela said. I think it was very productive. It illustrates similarities and differences with the other group because Angela and I attended both. But I think people's detailed explanations were helpful. And it's one of many bites of the apple is what I've been saying. So, but thank you everyone for preparing for the meeting and participating.
Is there any feedback on how the two groups differ or any sharing that you might want to do?
What would you say, Gail and Angela, about that?
Oh, well, I would say, I mean, in both groups, there seemed to be a willingness to look at a variety of heights and designs and densities, which I think was useful. I think a lot of the issue of height versus density and dwelling units per acre, I think continues to be challenging because unless you visualize it and understand some of the basics, it's hard to reimagine a site. Mm-hmm. And I think that's certainly an issue. I do think I'm delighted there were visuals. We talked about it in the subgroup A about having some examples of densities that are in the region so people have a clearer understanding of that. So, so I think some of the pinch points were the same for both groups.
I think this group was much more prepared, quite frankly, with your answers and more respectful of time, quite frankly, in monitoring your own, how much you spoke. So that helped. It's not a competition, but we got a little further.
Yeah, you better be careful. We're in Palo Alto. You got to be careful with that. Careful with that. But thank you, everybody.
All right. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Angela? Okay. All right. So we're going to go to our oral communications. If you are on Zoom, You can raise your hand in oral communications by going to the lower bar on your screen and clicking on participants. And you should find yourself in the attendee tab if you're an attendee. And you should see a way to raise your hand with a little blue hand will come up next to your name. Chitra Moitra will call your name, or maybe I'll call for teacher. We'll collaborate. But teacher will keep time for you. You'll have 3 minutes to give your comments, and she'll come on screen and let you know when your time has elapsed. So right now I see Jared, Cedric, and Rebecca. And I don't think anyone's on the phone, but if you are on the phone, if you press *9, you will be added to the list and your little hand will go up on my screen. So Jared is our first speaker. And Chitra, are you ready with time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Your 3 minutes starts now.
Actually, are we able to take Jared off of mute? Unmute.
Mute. Okay, I unmuted.
Great.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi.
Your 3 minutes starts now. How about that?
Okay.
That doesn't matter. It just, when the discussion was about density, I thought, you know, one of the people had lived in Cambridge. I lived in Cambridge for a while. I've also lived in Venice, that is Venice, Italy, and worked there. And it's very dense. It's full of tourists, which is a drag, but it's dense and it's quiet and it's really nice. And there's all kinds of people there. And we had all these demonstrations a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, which I didn't attend, but I read about in the Palo Alto Weekly. And if we care about poor people in general, just in general, and like that, then we have a great opportunity with this property available to develop right near the train station. And it can gradually blend into the current existing North Ventura neighborhood, but it should be as dense as possible toward the north end, actually northwest end. So we can just have people live here. And the way to go forward, I think, is to have people go to high school together, go to grammar school together, all kinds of people, many different kinds of people. And I live currently at 1330 Tasso, and I'm looking out here, and we're like 1/8 of an acre lots, so it's 8 units per acre. And the houses are big, and a bunch of them have been rebuilt, including the one I live in. And I don't know, what can I say, except density is good. And the idea of community, my daughter can't live here. She's a lawyer. She can't afford to live in Palo Alto, right? What does she do? Criminal defense, right? Not corporate law. And she couldn't possibly live here. So just know that density itself is not a problem. And it's a way forward. It's a way forward socially. It's a way forward economically. It's a good thing. And we can do it. I've lived in Manhattan too. Manhattan's too dense and it's dark. But that's all I have to say. I just wanted to sort of, I didn't understand the structure of the meeting because I joined late. That's all. Thanks a bunch. Bye.
Thank you, Jared.
Uh-huh. Thank you. The next speaker is Cedric Laborge. Your 3 minutes starts now.
So, hi, thank you. So I sent an email actually to the email address. I don't know if it's possible to put that email on the, share the screen on that. But basically, you know, I've been playing around with different building shapes with the principle that every housing unit, I believe, should have access to open space. And so I kind of have this concept of a building which is roughly pyramidal in shape, with each floor being slightly smaller and set back from the floor below it. So there's rooftop gardens, and each apartment building has a rooftop garden, so you have access to private open space. And I think this is really important. You know, we see now in quarantine where everybody's stuck inside, and I really feel bad for the people that are stuck inside of apartments that have no access to open space. And I think this satisfies the concept of having a taller building which is not imposing for the neighbors. And so I hope that you will share my email with the members of the staff so you could see maybe what an alternative building form might look like. And these are all within the 50-foot height limit, but they're not imposing buildings. And I believe that, rooftop gardens is really the best use of a building rooftop space. It provides, like you say, access to open space, which I think is a fundamental human right. It provides habitat for nature. It captures rainwater. It reduces the heat island effect. And it's really popular. There's a neighborhood outside of Paris where somebody did that first. I don't know, maybe in the 70s, it looks like. Once they did that, that archetype was repeated over and over again all around it. All these buildings were developed all with the same theme of rooftop gardens because they just saw how popular those buildings are. And we see that they're not only feasible, but they exist in Palo Alto. I point to, for instance, City Hall and Martin Luther King Plaza in front, which has rooftop gardens with large mature trees above a parking garage. And there's other examples in Palo Alto as well that don't come to the tip of my tongue. So anyways, I hope you'll take a look at that. And I included some renderings of those building forms, I think, which would provide a higher density, but still be respectful of the neighbors. Thank you very much. And my plan.
Yes, your time is up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We did get Cedric's email. We'll make sure we get that to all of the working group members.
The next speaker is Rebecca Eisenberg, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. My name is Rebecca Eisenberg. I'm running for city council, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I fell in love with a vision of Ventura that I saw in a survey that was given to me as a member of the League of Women Voters Planning Committee. I live across the street from Ventura in Old Palo Alto. My husband and I are both lawyers. We have 2 teenage kids. We can't afford to buy a home in Palo Alto. That's okay, we rent. We moved here for the public schools. I visit Ventura almost daily when I go on a walk, when I walk my dog, or I run myself through the neighborhood that borders my own. I enjoy walking through North Ventura. I look at the creek hidden behind the fences and concrete, and I see so much beauty. At night, I can hear the frogs. Also at night, I see the hundreds of vehicles parked on the streets, especially Park, filled with residents who lack homes due to our city's unwillingness to invest in affordable housing. Surely we all agree that it's better to have people live in housing than in cars on our streets. I believe that housing is a human right. I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts for 3 years when I attended law school. And I lived in Chicago for 1 summer, yet spent time there also regularly in my childhood because I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. What all of these lovely neighborhoods have in common is one thing: they lack office space. Office space is not an inevitability, despite what our local government tells us. It is office space more than any kind of housing, whether dense or not, that destroy the character of neighborhoods. Palo Alto is being destroyed by commercial developers. Office space is not what we should have here in the Ventura. It is something that Palo Alto actively invites by being the only city of our size in California that refuses to tax businesses or landlords or commercial developers or our largest employers. We don't tax them 1 dime, but every other city does. But that is something that we need to change. Once we start taxing our largest businesses, not small or medium businesses, not retail, not restaurants, but our biggest businesses, like the ones like Cloudera that are in the Ventura neighborhood, we will have the revenue to create housing, and we will have the space to build all the kinds of housing that you mentioned, as well as enough space to reclaim for public parks and the creek and places for families to roam. In the vision I saw of Ventura, there were streets that didn't have cars on them. Instead, they were serviced by electric shuttles and car-free streets where children can play safely. I'm sure you're aware that a child was killed on El Camino and California Ave, very close to Ventura, across the street from it, 4 months ago when hit by a truck that was, as far as I'm aware, doing construction for a commercial developer. That was a loss of life of a child that never should have happened here. It happened because we—
Your time is up.
Developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
The last speaker is Betty Katz.
Hello, everybody. My first comment is to thank all of my neighbors for the extraordinary amount of time and goodwill you've put into this process, and to Rachel as well. I think you've done a really diplomatic job of fielding many diverse opinions. I don't have a 3-minute thought. I only have a 1-minute thought. And that is, in addition to all of the other complex issues that you are trying to balance, density, aesthetics, everything else, it's one thing has been kind of oddly overlooked in the process, and that is our general location. I believe that our most spectacular asset is our geographical location, the foothills, the scenery, that comes to mind every time I walk down Park Avenue past the Cloudera building, which was formerly Agilent, formerly Hewlett-Packard, which is built within inches of the sidewalk and is blocking what would otherwise be a really spectacular view of our foothills. So this is simply a pitch as we continue to explore options, building types, levels of density, zoning, and all of that, that we remember that probably our greatest single asset is the natural environment, and anything that can be done to preserve views and vistas. Open space is one thing, but views and vistas is another, I think would contribute massively to the quality of life in our neighborhood. End of sermon. Amen. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
If anybody else is on the Zoom from the public and wishes to raise their hand for public comment, please do so now. Don't see any other hands for the folks who are here. And hopefully working group members, you've used the participants tab. If you click participants and then attendees, you can see at least the names that folks have given for members of the public. We have quite an audience this evening. So thank you all for listening in. And sorry for those of you, for the link was not easy to find. We'll make sure we make it clearer next time for each of the meetings. In terms of next steps, what we will do is hope to get together at the end of July. Chitra will send out a request to try to find dates that work for everybody, keep us in the same groups to kind of pick up where we left off in terms of working through this. So again, thank you guys so much for being so prepared, so generous to each other, and just really listening. It's, you know, it's nice to have a civil discourse with people and disagree in an agreeable manner. So I appreciate you all for that. And so
I want to say thank you to my fellow participants, and especially to Rachel, Nicole, and Chitra, and Claire from the city for helping us facilitate this meeting, and for my fellow participants for being so great to work with.
Yeah, you guys are really
You're welcome.
And it reminds me, in our last 10 seconds, Claire Campbell is going to be our new long-range planning manager here in Palo Alto. So she is taking the place of Elena Lee, who left us, I guess it was almost a year ago, last August. So she's here listening in, getting acquainted or reacquainted with the project, but she's been with Palo Alto for 18-ish years. So she started when she was very, very young, like an intern. And so we're really glad to have her on board and joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Good to be here.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you guys in about a month. Or Angela, did you have something, Angela? We're just waving? Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.